This week on Eye on the Clouds.
Shame! Shame, Dick, shame! Shame, Dick, shame! Shame, Dick, shame! Good job, get your act together,
Thank you, Jim. My word, if they've found the wand to make old trees young again, I want part of that. Dylan, would you like to speak for a moment on state forest breaches, please?
I used to be heavily involved with forestry for over a decade, and but during that time we tried to protect some of the local forests around here, like North Washpool and Chalundi. And with Chalundi, one thing we discovered was that Forest New South Wales, was then Forestry Commission, were logging without any proper consideration or protection for threatened for native fauna, and that was an offence under National Parks and Wildlife Act. So we took them to court saying they had to abide by National Parks and Wildlife Act, they had to protect fauna, and the Park Service had to enforce that protection. We proved our case in court. We proved that the Park Service is responsible for native fauna in New South Wales and they had to protect it. So what happened then was in 1992 there was the Endangered Fauna Interim Protection Act was introduced into Parliament, and so the National Parks and Wildlife Service gave all state forest operations, or almost all of them, a blanket licence to operate with no conditions, nothing to protect threatened fauna on it. And so for years and years later we would go and do our own surveys or find these threatened species in these areas that were being logged without any requirement to protect the threatened species in there, and we would try to force the Park Service, one compartment at a time, to introduce some protection for the threatened fauna. They were so reluctant to do it, it wasn't funny. Anyway, so we go through on time, and in about 1997 they introduced wide-ranging conditions for threatened fauna. They were done in negotiations with the Forestry Commission, with Forest New South Wales, and so they were compromised. There was no science involved, or very little science. It was a decision to minimise the impacts on timber resources. So there were these token prescriptions. There's not many of them, but there are some. Like, for example, the stuttering frog. The prescription is to protect 30 metres from streams within a certain distance of the record of the frog. The scientists are saying it's got to be 300 metres, but Park Service, in their negotiations with forestry, decided we'll go for 1/10 of what the scientists are telling us is required. And it's happened time and time again. So, you know, come forward in time, and I hadn't been involved with forestry for a long time, but some people complained about logging out at Yabra State Forest, and I went out there with John Corkill, and we inspected these minimal prescriptions were not being applied. And why aren't they being applied? Because now the Park Service, now called DEQA, wasn't doing their job. They weren't going out and making sure Forest New South Wales complied with the rules. So in Yabra alone, in 2 compartments out of dozens or hundreds being logged every year, we found that they logged 3 hectares of rainforest illegally. This is rainforest that was required to be excluded from logging, and they'd gone in there and they'd not only logged it, they'd pushed over all these trees so they could get eucalypt regrowth in there, because they had this hatred for the rainforest. They'd mapped it as a plantation, but even then it was meant to be protected because it was mapped rainforest. We found 5 streams where they'd logged all along the streams, and these were areas that, again, were meant to be protected, in this case particularly for threatened fish species, but DEC had gone and logged dozens and dozens of trees within these protection areas. Another thing we found was yellow-bellied gliders. They had all these records of yellow-bellied gliders, a really important area for yellow-bellied gliders, but rather than do what they're meant to do, which is every record they find of yellow-bellied glider, they're meant to protect 15 feed trees, and there's, you know, they've got to be smooth bark, mature trees within either 100 or 200 metres, depends on the record. They hadn't marked one single tree. They were meant to mark hundreds of trees. So they went and logged hundreds of trees that were required to be retained as critical food resources for the yellow-bellied glider. And another species there is a black striped wallaby, an endangered species, and they were meant to limit their removal of the canopy, and they were meant to protect the understory. You know, this was an inadequate prescription for an endangered species, but nonetheless, they didn't do it. And what did DEC do? Nothing. So for the illegal logging of rainforest, DEC gave us $300 fine for trashing 3 hectares of rainforest. That was what it cost them. They would have made more than that out of 1 hoop pine that they took. For the logging of stream banks, 5 stream banks, dozens of trees, they got a $500 fine from Fisheries New South Wales. For not marking one single of the hundreds of yellow-bellied glider feed trees they meant to be retained, they got a $300 fine. How many trees we lost, we don't know. We found lots of what they call yellow-bellied glider feed trees there, which had these chewed marks on them, which foresters are meant to identify before they log. They were so obvious, we found 11, and we saw more as we drove past, yet Forestry New South Wales didn't find one of them. And again, you know, $300 fine for all these probably hundreds of trees that were illegally felled. Plus, you know, the black striped wallaby habitat that had been too heavily logged. It was probably like 80% canopy removal instead of 50%, and the understory had been obliterated because they had a fire that they claimed got out of control. DEC didn't require any rehabilitation works, nothing. They required no rehabilitation works for the illegally logged rainforest, for the illegally logged stream banks, nothing. So here they are. You know, you go, you point it out to them, you rub their nose and say, look, here's a breach, do something about it. They do fuck all. Sorry. You know, it's just, it's so disappointing that the agency responsible for looking after our threatened species refuses to do so, refuses to adopt meaningful prescriptions to protect them, and refuses to enforce them. So, you know, we've gone on, we've done other forests, we've done it with Double Duke, where we found, or the Clarence Environmental Centre found, but we confirmed it, that endangered ecological community had been logged. The Clarence Environment Centre also found that up at Grange State Forest and NCEC had been logged. We're still waiting for action 6 months later. We're waiting for DEC to take legal action against Forest New South Wales for illegally logging. But what concerns me is what we found, we're finding everywhere else we go. We're finding breach after breach after breach. We're finding failure to regulate, and we're finding that now the DEC have pushed the envelope on how they interpret these prescriptions to allow almost anything. Down on the lower northeast, for example, you see clear felling, and they're claiming they're maintaining, retaining 60% of the base layer of those trees, and you go in there, there's only 10 or 20% left, you know. But they say, it's okay, we're not going to log over there for another 10 years or so, so we'll use that to meet our requirement for retention. We'll flatten this area, and then we'll come back in 10 years' time and we can flatten that area as well. You know, it is, yeah. Changing our native forest into simple monoculture plantations, and that's where they're headed. And unfortunately, the reality is, after all my years of dealing with Forest New South Wales under various different names of, you know, State Forest, Forest Commission of New South Wales, they're unrepentant. They hate biodiversity. They hate things that restrict their ability to kill trees and remove trees for timber. They have a single mindset, and they'll do whatever they can to avoid requirements. So, you know, while we're looking at koalas here, we found koalas in all the areas we've audited, but we haven't found one single thing done to protect them. Nothing. The koalas are there. They're meant to go through before logging and do scat counts. I don't believe they do it. I believe they just ignore the fact they're there. Years ago, you know, back in 1990, when we were first looking at forestry on a comprehensive basis, the prescription for koalas was, if you see one in a tree, wait till it moves, then cut down the tree. I don't think they even wait till they move these days. I just think it's go in and flatten the tree. Bugger the koala, we've got a licence to kill it, you know. So, I don't know where we go from here. The best we can do, though, is try to force DEC into taking their responsibility seriously and do something better than what they've been doing, because without them doing their job, forestry will just go on the way they are. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dylan.